What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tierfon Orbital. So today is going to be a demo video for an install commission that I completed on a Sabers Knight AS3. So this is Anakin's hilt. This is a very, very nice hilt. This is a full brass, chrome-plated brass hilt. It feels very substantial in hand. It's a great hilt. Phenomenal specimen. So this particular commission, I had a couple of requests from the customer. The customer wanted a crystal reveal hybrid chassis. Typically with me, what hybrid chassis look like are just MJF main nylon body of the chassis with some premium brass parts. So I did go about designing a custom crystal reveal chamber for this, as well as a brass battery cover and some extra greeblies as well. One of the challenges with designing a chassis for this hilt is the fact that not only does the internal diameter of the hilt step down in here, but I also had to accommodate for this control box, right? So there are switch plungers in that control box that will need to depress into switches on the body of the hilt. And given the placement of the crystal chamber, it was a little bit of a challenge doing that design, right? So I do want to come into Fusion like we typically do and talk about the chassis itself. And then we will come up top, talk about the hilt a little bit, talk about how to use it, and then we will come back down, put a blade in it, and do a demo, right? So same format, right? So anyhow, let's come into Fusion, talk about this chassis. Okay, so here it is, right? This is the chassis that I designed for this particular hilt, right? So a number of different parts going on with this chassis or with this setup. So let's start with the main body of the chassis. I did not get too crazy with greebly work on this main body of the chassis because of the depths that were involved with some of the wire management and wire channels. So just relatively simple ridges and ribs on the chassis itself. Not too crazy with the greebly work. However, I did design or utilize rather some of my vent greebly work to do in brass, right? So these two pieces here were done in brass and they are just glued to the side of the chassis. At the bottom, we have our 28mm speaker. Around the other side, we have our battery tray. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned about the internal diameter of this particular hilt is the fact that it steps down, right? So we start at 28mm up here, and then it steps down to a thinner diameter, okay? So because I've got a battery cover, I wanted to utilize a battery cover rather, I also had to step down the circumference of the battery cover as well. So not only is the circumference changing on the main body of the chassis, it's changing on the battery cover as well. And that was a little bit of a challenge figuring out the measurements for that, right? So battery, that's why you see two different circumferences on that battery cover itself. Battery cover just does have some greebly work on the top of it, okay? And that is it. So another thing that the customer really wanted with this build was a crystal reveal. So this is a giant crystal chamber. Okay, so super tall crystal chamber here. I do have a quartz point on the inside of this. The crystal chamber itself is just affixed to the MJF nylon body of the chassis after I wire everything up. Okay, let me get an isolated view of this crystal chamber so I can show you where the wire passage is, right? So the wire passage is at the bottom here, and that's where I bring all my leads up to the top part of the emitter, where I wire up the emitter rather. Okay. Around back, because we have to make a connection to those posts that are inside of the control box for our switches, I did have to mount switches on the surface of the chassis, right? So these are surface mount tactile switches, and they, you know, like I said, they make a connection to those plungers on the control box. There is a spine going down, not a spine, but there's an indentation going down this chassis as well. This will help. This not only helps clock the chassis in the correct orientation, but I also have to accommodate for those switch plungers or those switch posts because they do protrude into the internal diameter of the hilt, of the hilt. Just a little bit, just a hair. So I had to accommodate for that. And that is what that trough or that channel is. All right. And that's it. Really happy with how this one came out. It was a challenge. Like I said, you know, I had to accommodate for those two different internal diameters on the hilt. Okay, everything, well, the battery cover rather, is affixed to the main body of the chassis with neodymium magnets, and these are 4x6 magnets here and 2x4 magnets on the battery cover. All right, and that's it. So let's come up top. All right, different view today. I'm trying something different with both of these cameras, right? So let's see how this comes out. So anyhow, this is the Knight AS3 from Sabers. Great hilt, great specimen of Anakin's hilt. Like I mentioned, this is chrome-plated brass, and it definitely feels like it, right? So this hilt has some weight to it, has some heft to it. I've said this before. I like when a hilt has a lot of weight to it because to me it feels like a weapon. It makes it feel a little bit more real. Okay, but yeah, it's a great specimen. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how to use this guy. Right, so the chassis is already in the hilt, obviously. Okay, so let's take the grip off. There is a spacer in the grip of the hilt. I did not glue this in place. This will just live in the grip and help push this chassis up into the upper body of the hilt, right? So what can potentially happen without that is if you're putting your blade down in this hilt, it can loosen this chassis, and if that is not lined up perfectly correctly with the control box plungers, the switches will not activate. So that is why that has to stay in the grip. Okay, so that's just loose to the customer. So let's take this chassis out, right? So you just pull the chassis out. Here is the chassis, so let's get a better view of that chassis. This was done in, all of the brass parts were done in polished brass, and then I went back and weathered them at the request of the customer. Okay. And there's that battery cover. Let's take the battery out. Okay. Proffie board is here. Here is our 28mm speaker, and then Proffie board is around back. Okay. So there is no kill switch in this particular chassis, so you are the kill switch when you put this battery into the chassis. Spring side is your negative, so that is in the down orientation, down towards the speaker. Take your battery, put it in that battery tray, and the hilt, or the chassis rather, will power up. Here is that brass battery cover, right? And that just slaps onto the chassis like so, okay, nice and secure. I guess I don't have twist activate on this. There is that crystal chamber. Okay. Real quartz point in this crystal chamber that is lit with one single neopixel from below, okay, and then of course we have our lit PCB emitter up top. All right, so to put the chassis in the hilt, take note of where these switches are and where that channel is, or that trough. Line that up with the control box, and then you can just slide the chassis all of the way in until it stops. All right, and then you're going to want to put, you're going to want to put that spacer into the grip, and then you can thread the grip on, and you're ready to go. All right. So I'm going to take the chassis back out when we come down to the bottom, so we can get a little bit more of a detailed look at the chassis with my better camera down here. So let's come down to the bottom. All right, so there is that chassis. Hopefully this will focus. I've been having a problem with this camera lately focusing. So there is that crystal chamber, battery cover. All right. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the hilt. With that spacer. And we're good to go.
I'll never join you! On the dark side.
Alright. Hilt did come with a very nice blade plug, stock. Alright. I'm going to take that out. Let's put a blade in it. Okay, so this is a 7/8 inch blade holder. This red button at the back here will also serve as your blade retention. So you can unthread that, take your blade plug out. 7/8 inch blade, another reason I love this hilt. So you want to rest your blade on those PCB pins, and then you can tighten your thumb screw or this red button back here. Whoops. And then you're ready to go. One more.
Ben Solo.
Great feeling hilt. All right. And that is it. That is the Knight AS3 from Sabers. So, fun fact about this particular hilt. The Korbanth also offers a version of this hilt. I am forgetting the name of it now. Whatever new version of Anakin's hilt that Korbanth has right now in their store is the exact same specs as this hilt. So that chassis that I designed for this will also fit the Korbanth version of this hilt. So if anyone is interested in purchasing that chassis, I have added it to my web store, and it will work with a Korbanth hilt. I actually have one here, and I tested it. It's the same hilt, right? So it will work with a Korbanth Anakin, and it also obviously works for the Sabers version of this hilt as well, right? So that's all I got, everybody. To the customer for this particular commission, thank you very much for your patience. This one was a little bit of a longer project than I would have liked, but given the summer and a lot of the travel that I was doing, it took a little bit longer than expected, but I am always grateful for patient customers. So I am happy that we have completed this. I will get it in the mail as soon as I am done recording this video. And with that being said, that's all I've got, everybody. If anyone has any questions about this particular install or this chassis, please do not be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.